Training camp is coming to a close, and on today's episode, we're going to be talking about 32 players that the NFL and pretty much just us, we can't stop talking about because they matter for fantasy football. Dave Kluge, before we jump into this, you and I have a really cool league that we're going to be doing, the annual Football Guys Fantasy Show Listener League, and it's so simple for all of our listeners to join. Dave, you want to give the instructions as to how people can join into the Listener League here?
Yeah, super simple. You just got to find us on Apple Podcasts. Just search the Football Guys Fantasy Football Show, leave a review, screenshot that review, and send it to fantasyshow@footballguys.com. Fantasyshow@footballguys.com. We've still got, I want to say, 6 or 7 spots left. So hoping to fill those up at the end of the day and draft either sometime this weekend, maybe even next Tuesday if we have to push it out a little bit. But host this on Sleeper. It's a ton of fun. We've done it for the last few years. The winners from previous years get to carry over into this. So this will be the third year now that we've done this and really excited. So just leave us a review, preferably 5 stars, but doesn't need to be, on Apple Podcasts. Send that over to us at fantasyshow@footballguys.com and we will try to get you in there. And if we can't get you in the listener league, we do have guaranteed spots still available in Football Guys Bowl.
Speaking of just more Football Guys stuff, if we're just going to go promo to start the show, over my right shoulder here, guys, if you're watching on video, that up there, you can't see it, it's kind of blurred out from my camera. That is the Football Guys magazine, and it is just gorgeous. Even my wife, when I got it, she's like, oh, this isn't a magazine. You guys know that, right? You got to stop calling it a Football Guys magazine because it's not. Like, this is a coffee table book. It's beautiful. It's there's so much in there. It's not just like rankings and mock drafts and cool pictures, even though it is all those things. There's some really good thought pieces in there from some of our best writers like Sigmund Bloom, Matt Waldman. There's so many cool pieces in there. So if you guys have not gotten that already, be sure to check that out in the link below. Dave, no more
Yep.
housekeeping. Let's get into this. We got 32 teams. We're going to go quick through these. First team, Arizona Cardinals. Right now, tight end Trey McBride, poised for huge year as the primary target. And I think that's the key word there. Primary target. And I don't think that's anything new, but I think it's noteworthy that it's being brought up.
Yeah, and I think that's the big thing here is a lot of people are just expecting that Marvin Harrison will eventually take over as that guy. I don't think it's going to happen. Didn't happen last year, and I don't think it's going to happen this year either. Last year, target share, looking at what Trey McBride did, the only players that had a higher target share than Trey McBride last year: Malik Neighbors, AJ Brown, Justin Jefferson, Puka Nacua, Devontae Adams. This guy is getting elite wide receiver one usage, and that's why, Alfredo, we've talked about it a lot this offseason. We both had him ahead of Brock Bowers. I did a lot of drafts this weekend, and I'm starting to see that flip finally happen where people are taking Trey McBride ahead of Brock Bowers. But I think that's the way that you should have it ranked. I mean, this guy is going to be the offensive focal point, pulled almost 30% of the team's targets last year, and that shouldn't change this year.
Are you still Team Kittle over McBride?
I am, yes. Which, when we talk about the San Francisco 49ers, I mean, that entire wide receiver room right now is on ice. Everybody is either hurt or something's going on there. So, yeah, I do think Kittle is still the guy, but McBride, a great target at cost.
All right, Atlanta Falcons offensive coordinator Zach Robinson has been, quote, stretching the limits with running back Bijan Robinson, moving him around the formation, stating flexibility with Bijan. Oh man, it's gonna keep catching me like that. Flexibility with Bijan has been the goal since the start of the preseason. Dave, I mean, we love to hear that. This is what we love to hear on a guy that, for some people, is the number one overall pick. He is the running back one in many rankings and many drafts. The more ways you can use him, I mean, we're looking at a potential Todd Gurley, LaDainian Tomlinson-esque season from Bijan Robinson.
Yeah, they've talked about wanting to use him as a pass catcher a lot, but the other big thing that they've talked about is wanting to use him where he can get out in open space and rip off big plays. What do you think is the longest rush of Bijan Robinson's career, Alfredo?
Oh, I want to pick a fun number like 39 yards.
38 yards. Yeah,
Oh, that was so good.
yeah. There's
Proud of
not
myself.
been you see Saquon Barkley and Derrick Henry and Christian McCaffrey and these other, premier running backs. They have those 60, 70, 80-yard touchdowns that can just make or break a week in fantasy. And we have never seen that from Bijan Robinson. So they've talked about wanting to get him out in space so he could rip off those big plays. They actually compared it to Saquon Barkley and what he did in Philadelphia last year. They talked about wanting to use him more as a pass catcher, line him up in the slot, lining him up out wide. So yeah, I mean, I can't get there as far as having him as the number one overall pick. But yeah, still a great pick that you can get inside the top 5 of your draft.
Baltimore Ravens have a decision to make here where they are not sure if they're going to be putting Isaiah Likely on IR. to start the season. And honestly, the fact that this is even a talking point, that it is a decision for them to make, is what's concerning, regardless. Because even if he is going to be active, he maybe doesn't play for the first couple weeks. Oh, there's a beautiful puppy in the background. Sorry, I had to say hi to your dog.
Oh, hey, what's up, Zoe? Making a little appearance
um,
here.
special guest appearance. That was Orzo.
That is Orzo. Yep.
Oh, cutie. But yeah, like for the thing with Isaiah Likely, what worries me here is not whether he's on IR or not. It's the fact that he is this injured right now to start the season. And Mark Andrews, Dave, like feels like one of these better values at tight end. I know a lot of the fantasy world is taking TJ Hawkinson and Sam Laporta over both Mark Andrews and Travis Kelce. And I'm at the point where I just think that might be wrong here as we're entering fantasy draft weekend.
Yeah, I'm completely with you. I got Mark Andrews as my tight end four. We talk about this all the time. It's just like Mark Andrews' season last year was bookended by two really bad things. Like early in the season, he had that preseason car accident, had that big primetime game in week one where he kind of lost out on his opportunities to Isaiah Likely. And then, of course, at the very end of the season, we saw that drop on the 2 point conversion that kind of ended the season for the Baltimore Ravens. So because of that, I think that people think that Mark Andrews just like isn't good anymore, but he was still a top five tight end last year. If you look outside of that week one game, Isaiah Likely was an afterthought in the offense. I mean, he was getting the same usage as guys like Noah Gray. Like he really wasn't that involved in the offense. So I've still seen people drafting him, but I mean, to me, the stage is cleared for another big season from Mark Andrews here, and just getting so overlooked in so many drafts.
Speaking of tight ends, Buffalo Bills, Dalton Kincaid. We have heard so many up and down reports, but mostly it's kind of been the reports that Dalton Kincaid hasn't really taken the step to become the guy in this offense. And that's with Khalil Shakir out with an injury and really no top wide receiver one on this offense. And that was sort of the thing where Dalton Kincaid could step in and be that guy that we've seen some of these other tight ends become. Dawson Knox is still a thing. And according to our very own Jeff Bell, who is a Bills fan and has his ear very close to the beat of this preseason, Dalton Kincaid's just not going to be a thing this year.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. I mean, it's just been a pattern of injuries now. We got ankles and knees, and it's just like it seems like he's always dealing with something. And the opportunity was there. Like when Khalil Shakir went down with that high ankle sprain, a lot of people had hoped that Dalton Kincaid would step up, but instead we start hearing good news about Keon Coleman and good news about Josh Palmer and good news about Dawson Knox. So I know, Dalton Kincaid, there was some exciting usage his rookie season, and he's got the draft capital that we like, but I've cooled off on him a ton. It has been such a quiet offseason for him. I've got him all the way down at tight end 20 in my rankings, which means that I'm not getting Dalton Kincaid in a single league that I'm drafted in.
Yeah, I was playing around with him earlier at like tight end 12, tight end 13, tight end 14, and then I'm just like, it just keeps going down where I'm like, you know who you are? You are Kyle Pitts of the North. Like that's kind of where I'm just
My
going to
tight
keep
end
you.
22.
Sheesh. All right, next team on here, Carolina Panthers. Wide receiver Adam Thielen is reportedly and could be on the trade block, and one of the big rumors is that he could be going to Minnesota, team where there's some familiarity and they have a wide receiver need. This would leave guys like Xavier Legette, Jimmy Horn Jr. to be, some of the guys that can take over some of these positions. But I think the guy who this really affects the most could actually end up being Jalen Coker,
Yeah.
who does a really nice job out of the slot. And Dave, I think he becomes a really, really intriguing late to last round pick, depending on the size of drafts. So he's a guy that I'm looking at when I get into that round 15, 16, 18, that zone. I'm constantly eyeballing Jalen Coker.
Yeah, he's been a big riser for me throughout the entire offseason and preseason because it seemed like he was pretty buried on this depth chart earlier, but just consistently kept making big plays, kept rising up the ranks. It seemed like they wanted Hunter Renfro to kind of be that guy. And then Adam Thielen was there. Now, with the talks about Adam Thielen getting traded, it sounds like they do have a lot more faith in Jalen Coker. So I imagine that we'll see him and Leggett kind of flip flopping between the slot and the flanker role. They both have speed where they can get behind defenses. They both have athleticism where they can live out of the slot as well. Tedero McMillan is the clear X and number one wide receiver here. I mean, it's just been nonstop good news about Teteroa McMillan. They still need, a little bit of polish to his game. He's more of a project than I think that they had initially anticipated. But yeah, I think when you get down to three wide receiver sets, what they want to do is move on from Adam Thielen so they could have Teteroa McMillan, Xavier Legette, and Jalen Coker, three young guys out there that they can kind of build around for the future.
Next team on here, Chicago Bears. Got some running back injuries that could kind of shuffle around the depth chart. It does seem, though, DeAndre Swift is the guy over there. And Dave, with all the rumors that maybe Roshan Johnson gets cut or traded, Kyle Monungai has had himself a very nice camp, but he's really not a passing down guy. Um, and oddly enough, like too, even though he's a tough runner, he's not a big guy either. He's
Right.
just a compact dude that like high school coaches would love because he does the dirt. Like he is the Udonis Haslam of running backs out there for the Chicago Bears backfield. But what I think all this is saying is that it really leaves the door open for DeAndre Swift to have a massive workload and to create big plays in an offense where everyone's worried about who's going to be catching the ball as the wide receiver or the tight end one or tight end two. And it's just like, well, when the defense has that many people to worry about, I'm pretty sure your running back is going to be running free throughout this offense.
Yeah, and that's it. I went back and first of all, like I do the Chicago Bears training camp, so like all the news that we get, that's from me compiling that, and it has been so hard getting a
That's why
read
I hated
on
it.
the
So many
backfield.
misspellings and errors throughout the whole thing, Dave. Come on. I'm just kidding.
I
There's not. Dave's fantastic.
we I've tried so hard to get like a clear picture, but the issue is like DeAndre Swift was hurt early in camp. Then Roshan Johnson got hurt, and then Kyle Monungai got hurt. So we haven't really seen like all three of these guys be healthy. And normally, what you want to see is like who's getting the first touches, who's out here with the first team. They've all gotten tastes with the first team because they've all been, at times the RB1 because the other two guys have been injured. So it's been tough getting a read on this backfield overall. DeAndre Swift missed a lot of camp so far dealing with injuries, but you saw in that preseason game, he was on the field for almost every one of Caleb Williams' snaps. He saw a touch on almost half of the snaps that he ran. And, there's just like these little things in Ben Johnson's offense that are just like such simple but well designed plays, like where they run a play action, entire defense or the entire offense is moving to the right. It looks like it's going to be this rollout to the right. And then DeAndre Swift just like leaks out and is just wide open in the flat for like an easy 6 yard attempt. And that's the stuff that I feel like we haven't really seen in the Bears offense in recent years. So DeAndre Swift, I think that he's going to be the RB1 here, as we saw from this preseason usage, and just such a good value. And the one other thing that I want to point out is so many people remember Jamal Williams, and everyone's like, I want the Jamal Williams in this offense. But what they don't realize, or maybe don't remember, is that DeAndre Swift sprained his ankle in week 3 and missed a decent chunk of that season. And when he came back, Jamal Williams was kind of the guy that was getting the majority of the rushing down work. But Swift was still super involved as a pass catcher in that offense. He was the RB16 on a per game basis in 2022, and Jamal Williams was doing Jamal Williams things. So even if DeAndre Swift does cede some work to Kyle Monungai or Roshan Johnson, I think that there's going to be enough usage through the air that DeAndre Swift is going to be a top 20 running back again this year.
Yeah, that's also just not how you play fantasy football, where you try to catch lightning in a bottle and say, I really want to get the guy who's going to get me 16 touchdowns, but not actually be the starter.
Right.
Like that just doesn't happen where you guys get a guy with double digit touchdowns on maybe twice as many carries. It's just not a thing to be chasing for. So, yes, DeAndre Swift, big playability, receiving upside out of the backfield. That's where you want to go in the Chicago backfield. Dave, Cincinnati Bengals running back Chase Brown continues to drop praise for his improvement as a pass catcher. Should put up big receiving numbers out of the backfield. And so this is something I think we're hoping for. And something you were telling me beforehand is that Chase Brown actually went out of his way to make sure that he can be a better receiving running back.
Yeah, where he kind of said that, like, he's confident about his abilities as a rusher, but he spent a lot of time this offseason working out with wide receiver coaches so he could become a better route runner, so he was better at catching the ball, and thinks that there was still some meat on the bone last year as a pass catcher. So yeah, Chase Brown has moved way up for me. I've got him as an early second round pick in drafts. That being said, Taj Brooks still, I feel like the market hasn't adjusted to where they should. You can get him in the last round of almost every single draft. I don't think there's going to be any standalone value here, but when you look at guys like Ray Davis and Trey Benson, these injury away running backs that are going in like rounds 10, 11, 12. I think that's where Taj Brooks should be going, but instead he's falling into like round 18. So when you look at like values of injury away running backs, Taj Brooks, I think, is one of the best values out there. No standalone value, but huge contingent upside.
And you know what? I'm pulling this up just because like I want to have the practicality of it, Dave. As we always talk about all these handcuff or backup running backs that they're going so late. They should be going earlier. This is exactly how the back end of your draft should always look. I'm looking right now, and in my home league that I'm still currently drafting in, I didn't take my quarterback until round 14 or 15. Or excuse me, 14 and 15. I got Caleb Williams and Justin Herbert. But every pick before and after that is a running back. It's Jordan Mason, Jaden Blue, Rashad White, Braylon Allen, Ollie Gordon, Chris Rodriguez. Like that's how the back ends of your draft should look. And a guy like Taj Brooks absolutely meets that criteria.
Yep.
All right, next on here, Cleveland Browns tight ends David Njoku and Harold Fannin Jr. should both be important pieces in the passing offense. And David, this is something that we've seen where Fannon's getting a lot of buzz and he's getting a lot of first team reps. He had himself a nice touchdown reception the other day in a preseason game. And I know while the attention is on who's going to be the starting quarterback, Harold Fannin has quietly been pretty damn good. Now, my question is this is how do we take off the blinders of, well, he's the second tight end on this offense to say maybe he's the third target on this offense? And then I have another hurdle, which is how much do I care about the third target on a potentially very bad offense?
Well, if Joe Flacco's the quarterback, I think it's going to be a pretty good offense.
Pretty
Whether
good
that's
or
for
like passable?
I mean, pretty good. We saw like David Njoku was like the top scoring tight end, and Amari Cooper was the top scoring wide receiver 2 years ago in this offense with Joe Flacco. They're going to throw the ball a lot, and he's a gunslinger. So I do kind of like it with Joe Flacco. I think the problem is it's like a ticking time bomb. Like, are we getting 2 weeks of Flacco? Or are we getting 6, 10 weeks? Like, at some point that's not going to remain, and then it's like you're hoping Shador Sanders or Dylan Gabriel or Kenny Pickett can keep it afloat, but
Sheesh.
yeah, that's kind of the scary part. Like Jerry Judy, like if you told me Joe Flacco was starting for 17 games, Jerry Judy would be inside my top 15. Njoku would be inside my top 5. But the fear, of course, is that it's not going to last. But back to the tight ends here. David Njoku has never really had the role that we want to see in fantasy. He's made up for it because he's such a good athlete. But more oftentimes than not, when we see these fantasy tight ends that just kind of like break fantasy, it's guys that are playing primarily out of the slot. Mark Andrews, Travis Kelsey, and David Njoku's never been that guy. He's always like taken 60% of his snaps in line, but now we have Harold Fannin is a very different type of tight end. So they can be on the field together where you'll see David Njoku playing that inline role, and Harold Fannin immediately is locking down slot snaps. He's running routes deep downfield. They're giving him a full route tree to run. So this isn't your typical like tight end two. I think that he's going to play much more as a big slot while David Njoku retains his role as that inline tight end.
See, this is where I get worried because we do this all the time where we fall into the week one, week two traps of like, well, this team might start off good because of XYZ player. And that's rarely ever how teams look 6, 7, 8 weeks down the line. And so, I mean, we can always adjust, right? And that's the thing is like, if you are going to be willing to adjust, then do it. Go and grab a Harold Fannin as one of your last picks, draft a David Njoku or Jerry Judy, and be ready and willing to adjust as the Cleveland Browns offense adjusts. But like, I think it's probably more likely than anything else that we get to week 8 and we're looking at Quinshon Judkins as the starting running back instead of Jerome Ford, and we're looking at Dylan Gabriel as the starting quarterback or Shadur Sanders as the starting quarterback at that time. And like, we don't know what this team is going to be. I think that's what worries me the most is like, we already don't know so much about fantasy. I kind of don't want to tempt fate by saying like, let me go over there and play with that grenade, the Cleveland Browns. Like I'd just rather not. All right, next on here, Dallas Cowboys, wide receivers George Pickens and CeeDee Lamb, looking like one of the best 1-2 punches in the league. Dave, we haven't. I wanted to talk about this because it's not really news. It's more of just kind of like a statement or a question, really, where it's where do you have George Pickens? Because we haven't talked about him much this offseason, and I think it's he should be right alongside a bunch of these other guys, Devontae Smith and Jalen Waddle and Travis Hunter and a bunch of these other exciting big play wide receiver twos that are in good offenses. Where do you have George Pickens, and how much are you actually drafting him?
Yeah, I've got him at wide receiver 29, so I'm a little bit below consensus, but still, mixing him in here and there. Like you said, it's just kind of in that cluster where, like for me, it's Terry McLaurin, George Pickens, Terry McLaurin, shout out, for the contract extension, well deserved.
Whoop.
Happy he was able to get that. But yeah, like I got George Pickens ahead of DJ Moore, right behind Devonta Smith. So yeah, kind of sandwich with a lot of these other guys in that kind of back end wide receiver 2 range where the ceiling is very, very high, but not being the primary target could also lead to some quiet weeks.
Yeah, that's interesting because you and I must be like very far apart on this because when you said you have him ahead of DJ Moore, I was like, whoa, I have DJ Moore as my wide receiver 20 right now. and
Cool.
I have George Pickens as my wide receiver 32. The funny thing is that I do see them extremely close, and I think that tells you everything you need to know about that tier of
Yep.
players. Where it's, I think honestly, everywhere from Marvin Harrison Jr. at 19 all the way down through like I've got a Mecca Egbuka at 37. I think we're like essentially looking at the same players.
Right. And
Very,
see that, yeah,
very
and I've
minimal
got
difference.
Emeka Egbuka at wide receiver 25. I've got DJ Moore at wide receiver 31. So like it sounds like there's these huge dissensions in our rankings, but yeah, it's really just like the high end wide receiver twos to back end wide receiver threes are very tight. Chris Harris, says it all the time, the wide receiver three and the infinite sadness. Like that's really what it is. Like once you get outside of those like top 15, top 18 wide receivers, you're looking at a bunch of the same guys realistically.
And what was it last year where we were doing rankings and we were just like, yeah, there's about 36 wide receiver twos in fantasy football because
Mhm.
everyone was, yeah, he could be a top 24 wide receiver, but we've got him ranked at wide receiver 48, it's drafting him at wide receiver 50.
And
It's
without going
just
off
kind
on,
of how it
like,
is.
too much of a tangent, like, it does feel like, we try so hard to, like, put everybody into these clean boxes, like, "You're a wide receiver 1, and you're a wide receiver 2, and you're a wide receiver 3, and you're a first
Right.
round fantasy pick." But this year, ADP is weird, like, it feels like there's, like, 19 first round picks. Like, when you're drafting at the top of round 2 and you're walking away with Drake London and Jonathan Taylor and Chase Brown, it feels like those guys should be going in the first round, but you can only fit so many players in there, and when you're drafting George Pickens as your wide receiver 3, it might feel like you're getting a wide receiver 2, but that's because it feels like there's this huge swath of wide receiver 2s this year. So yeah, like we want things to be neat and pretty and broken up into sections of 12 because that's what makes sense for our fantasy football brains, but that's just not how it works.
Swath is a good word, and we need to bring it back. I'm just going to say that. Denver Broncos quarterback Bo Nix has looked uneven throughout the preseason, and Dave, you and I think we're sprechen Sie the same language here on Bo Nix, where like we don't really look at him as this can't miss quarterback for fantasy going into this year, where absolutely need to have him. He's such a value. He should be going higher, all that. Um, Talk to me about Bo Nix because I'm not quite as sold on him as maybe some others might be.
Yeah, it's really weird to me, like how much drafters and ADP have just decided that Bo Nix is the year two guy to bet on. I copped out big time in my rankings. I've got Bo Nix, Caleb Williams, Drake May, JJ McCarthy back to back to back to back between QB 13 and QB 16. Like these are
Oh, you
all
have JJ
just
McCarthy pretty high.
I do, yeah, yeah. I just see Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, TJ Hawkinson, a good system that's helped a lot. But let's remove JJ McCarthy from the conversation and just look
Sure.
at Drake May, Caleb Williams, and Bo Nix. If you look last year on a per game basis, they were doing pretty similar stuff. If you look at the passing yard outage and the rushing yard outage, the difference is Bo Nix scored a lot more touchdowns. He rushed for touchdowns, he threw for a lot of touchdowns. We know that is really hard to predict year over year. That is not a sticky stat. So when I look at the underlying metrics, just like how much were you throwing for, how much were you rushing for, Bo Nix should be a lot closer to Caleb Williams and Drake May than ADP has it. ADP has just kind of decided that Bo Nix is the guy that's going to take this huge step forward. Um, I just recently was asked to contribute to a Fantasy Bros article with the biggest busts at each position, and I had Bo Nix listed as my biggest bust. It's not that I think he's going to be terrible, but right now he's getting drafted as a QB7, QB8, QB9, and I think he deserves to be more in that QB2 discussion than drafters are admitting.
And there's another thing too, Dave. Like last year was not really a great QB year in terms of
Right?
fantasy
Yeah,
value. Like
yeah,
there were so many quarterbacks that were being drafted as quarterback 20, 24, or whatever that finished as top 10s. And that's not necessarily like boosting them up. It's more of kind of like an indictment on the whole quarterback position as a whole. Like there's
right.
games here where Bo Nix doesn't throw for a touchdown or run for a touchdown, and he's still quarterback 18. Like
Yeah.
and that's you know what game that is? That is the crazy New Orleans Saints game back from week 7 where he
Mhm.
just threw an air ball to no one, split
Yep.
in between two. Like it was not a good game, and he was still nearly a top 12 quarterback. So it's like I know it sounds like we're just hating. I think it's just there's more speculation on our end about Bo Nix than maybe previously believed. Where it's like I don't really like that little dead zone of quarterbacks where I'm looking at Baker Mayfield and Bo Nix. I think I'd rather go for some upside at other positions and just keep waiting at quarterback.
Yeah. And you also see, like, I'd argue, again, back to like the year two quarterback discussion, Drake May, Caleb Williams, much improved situations in 2025 than they had in 2024. You can make an argument that Bo Nix returning to the same system with the same players is good for his development, but they're also there aren't the same warm and fuzzy feelings that you get about Drake May and Caleb Williams. Seeing why they could take that big step forward, Bo Nix were just like hoping that it will happen.
Also, just a really small thing too, as we're on quarterbacks here, is pay attention to the scoring in your leagues. I've seen a lot of people not really familiar with, is it a 6 point per passing touchdown or 4 point per passing touchdown? And I've been seeing guys taking like Kyler Murray's and Drake Mays of the world who have this incredible rushing upside, and yeah, it's still helpful. But in a 6 point per passing touchdown league, like I'm leaning more towards some of these guys, Dave, like Dak Prescott and Brock Purdy and Jordan Love, that are still very good quarterbacks. And maybe they
Yeah.
don't have the same rushing upside, but there's still some. Just pay attention to that, guys.
Yeah, I've
All
got
right.
Purdy, Herbert, and Dak ahead of all those year two guys.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Next on here, Detroit Lions. I'm just going to say one name, Dave. Isaac Tesla. How does it make you feel?
He's good. I think there's a lot of mouths to feed in Detroit. I think Jameson Williams, Amon St. Brown, Sam Laporta, Jameer Gibbs, David Montgomery, they're going to get theirs before Isaiah Tesla gets his. But a good player, and it's just impossible to ignore what he's done in every single preseason game so far. And he's not the biggest stat compiler when he was in college, but sometimes you just got to look beyond that. Round three guy, but they traded up aggressively to get him in the draft. Off the charts athleticism on a good team. I think that more likely than not, he'd probably need a Jameson Williams injury because then you can put him in that role where he can be that big play threat.
Yeah.
I think he'd probably need a Jameson Williams injury to be relevant in redraft. But in dynasty leagues, in your super, super deep, like 22 plus round leagues, I think he's worth a dart throw.
Yeah, he's one of these guys. He played a lot of slot in college, and it looks like they've got him working a lot on the outside here at the pro level. And I don't know how much of that is them just wanting for him to be a versatile playmaker, to basically say,
Mhm.
like, hey, you step in if St. Brown or JMO is going to be set to miss any time. Honestly, we look at the depth chart, and Tim Patrick is the starter there. Like, I don't know how long
Right.
that holds. And even if Tassad does jump into the starting lineup, I think you're going to end up with a lot of the same boom bust weeks that you had with a guy like Josh Reynolds in years past that you've
Mhm.
seen on the Lions offense. So,
I think
yeah, I think
Khalif Raymond is probably the closest role, like the guy who can come in, do some
yeah.
gadgety stuff, and has speed and can rip off big plays. That's probably what they'll ask Tesla to do. So, yeah, if you want like 1.25 times what Khalif Raymond used to do, I think that's probably what you're getting with Tesla.
Yeah, he's a fun player. Like, don't get me wrong, he's a fun player. I think just gotta contextualize like what that role could be if he's out there on the field. All right, Orzo is just loving this
Yeah,
podcast
I don't know
today,
if you
and
could hear. She was like
uh,
whistling and snorting
I
earlier
heard,
too.
I
Like she
heard
is. We went on a
she's
big hike
boisterous
this
today.
weekend, and she's feeling it.
She's trying to take the mic away from old daddy over there. All right, next on here, Green Bay Packers rookie wide receiver Matthew Golden has just been looking fantastic through camp, through the preseason, made himself a big catch the other day. Jaden Reed has still been dealing with injury. There was a Romeo Dobbs trade rumor that came and went so fast that I
Yeah,
missed it. But yeah, Matthew Golden, Dave, is a guy that we've talked about a little bit here as I think he's probably should be getting drafted higher than what he's going at right now in fantasy drafts.
yeah. I've got him as my wide receiver 36, so that puts him inside the wide receiver three conversation, as we kind of jokingly talked about
Mm-hmm.
earlier. But I think the ceiling here is so high. I mean, we know there's a bunch of guys in Green Bay. No disrespect to Jaden Reed, Romeo Doubs, Dontavian Wicks, but we've kind of seen what they are at this point, and them going out and drafting a first round wide receiver, immediately taking over the role as one of their primary guys the first week of camp. Just big play after big play. We've seen contested catches, we've seen plays after the catch, we've seen downfield, we've seen on the boundary, we've seen across the middle of the field. I mean, they're asking him to do it all, and he is up to the task. But more than anything, it's just like I'm in on the Packers offense big time this year. Jordan Love dealing with that
Yeah.
injury on his non-throwing hand now, but prior to that, they were talking about how he just had command of the offense, command of the organization, had the trust and respect of everybody. Looked like a seasoned vet out there in practices. So I think this is one where the Packers weren't great last year because they had this litany of injuries that they were dealing with. But now coming into the season, I know I'm saying like healthier. I just don't expect an injury on a non-throwing hand to really impact Jordan Love that much. So when he gets back out there, I expect this offense to just be much, much better than they were last year.
For me, I keep going back to the whole thing where it's just like from a scouting standpoint, I want to see more of Matthew Golden. It's that thing where I keep saying I need him to prove it to me. The problem is that doesn't work in fantasy football
Mhm.
because there is no wait until week 3 and then I pick him up. So it's just like if you're right on Matthew Golden, he's the kind of player that wins your league. If you're wrong on Matthew Golden, he doesn't really hurt you because of where you're drafting him in fantasy drafts. So it's like
Right.
it's worth it to be in on Matthew Golden in fantasy football. I think it just comes down to that simple philosophy there.
Absolutely.
Also, I just noticed, Dave. Sorry, my ADD brain is like all over the place today. You're very stash heavy today in the beard. Was that is that intentional?
Yeah, I trimmed it up on Friday, and it's just coming back in now. But yeah, I had a little mustache over the weekend.
Yeah, yeah. There's a lot of stash going on there. Sorry, it's extremely distracting. Head on over to the YouTube, guys, if you're listening on the audio. See the glorious stash. All right, Houston Texans. This is a name we have not said all offseason, but wide receiver Xavier Hutchinson is poised to handle the number 3 role behind Nico Collins and Christian Kirk. And Dave, the reason we even talk about this is because it means that Jaden Higgins is not really the guy there, and reports have been that it's been an up and down camp for him. Jalen Knoll has actually been a guy who's looked good throughout camp. His teammate from Iowa State. But there's so much to unpack here, Dave. Like, I think Christian Kirk actually ends up being one of the most undervalued wide receivers in fantasy football once again.
Yeah, and Christian Kirk, he's been a big riser for me throughout camp because of exactly what you're saying here. You know, you can't ignore it. We went into camp not really knowing what to make of this wide receiver room. We knew Nico Collins was going to be the top dog, and then we weren't sure where everybody else would kind of fall into place. Sounds like Christian Kirk has clearly locked in the wide receiver 2 role. I mean, getting a nickname Slot Demon, that's a fun nickname that you want to pay
A little
attention to just
sacrilegious.
2 weeks into camp. Hey, you were talking about K-pop demon hunters to start the show.
That's
We've
the
already
name of a
opened a can of
show.
worms today,
That's the name of a
and
show. I didn't call someone a demon. I'm just
that's what he's being called around Houston camp this year. I don't know what to make of Jaden Higgins or Jalen Knoll. You know, during the scouting process, these were guys like you and I both loved, like big fans of these boys out of Iowa State. But you know, getting some decent buzz here and there. But when you hear that Xavier Hutchinson is out there getting in wide receivers or in 3 wide receiver sets, definitely concerning. And the problem is like we need to put an actionable spin on this. It makes it really tough for me to want to draft Jaden Higgins because he is still getting drafted like in that Matthew Golden range in the you know and I just can't do it knowing that Matthew Golden is like already solidified himself as the top target on the team. We don't even know if Jaden Higgins is going to be on the field. So as much as I like Jaden Higgins the prospect, I just can't draft him right now. And I think most people that are drafting him are going to be dropping him after week 2 or 3. So I'll keep my ear to the street and, you know, kind of see if there's some buzz coming up about Jaden Higgins. Maybe he'll make for, you know, a nice midseason addition off the waiver wire. But for people who are drafting this weekend, it's really hard to justify drafting Jaden Higgins right now.
yeah. I don't think that Jaden Higgins is going to be in my top 72 for wide receivers. Like I think I don't even want to have him as a wide receiver 6, or maybe he's going to be on that bubble. Cuz there are other guys pushing for starting spots right now that I think are equally as interesting, even like a Pat Bryant who I wasn't huge on coming out of college, but the Devon Vele trade sort of opens things up. Like there's some stuff there that's going on that's interesting. All
Jaden
right,
Higgins or Alameda Zacchaeus? Who are you drafting?
quit fantasy football forever. Is that an
Because I've
option?
got Zacchaeus ahead. I've got Zacchaeus ahead of Jaden Higgins in my rankings, which is not a joke.
I'll take Malik Washington for
There you go.
500, Alex.
There you
There
go.
we go. Next on here, Indianapolis Colts. And this is late news, but Daniel Jones named as the starting quarterback, Dave. I've seen a lot of people have different takes on this and what it means. Sure, Daniel Jones, I think we've seen what he can be for fantasy. Like he can give you a couple of top 12 weeks, but for the most part, you're not really relying on him to be your starting quarterback for fantasy. I think it's more so what kind of effect he has on the players around him. And there's been a lot of takes. It's like, who's going to be the one that benefits the most? Is it Michael Pittman, who's going to get all the targets? Is it Josh Downs because he's a slot? Is it Tyler Warren because the team invested heavily in him and he can play in the slot?
It's Jonathan
Where
Taylor.
you at?
I think Jonathan Taylor is the biggest winner. Like we've seen this guy like when he plays alongside Anthony Richardson, he's like a boomer bust RB2. And when Anthony Richardson isn't on the field, like regardless of who else it is, he is a smash RB1. So you know, I was already pretty aggressive on Jonathan Taylor. Can't move him up in my rankings, but yeah, I've got him as my why can't I find it? Yeah, my RB5 on the year. So like a very aggressive Jonathan Taylor ranking. But the other thing too, I think you might be a little bit quick to dismiss Daniel Jones as not being fantasy relevant. This guy was a QB9 a couple of years ago, thrown to
I said
Isaiah
I said he can
Hodgins.
start for in
Yeah,
fantasy games, but like you don't
yeah.
want him being your starter every week. Is that a false statement?
I mean, we'll
Oh, come
see,
on.
but this is a much better room of pass catchers than he had in New York. Like when he gave us that QB9 season, Isaiah Hodgins was his number one wide receiver.
Where
I
do you
can't
have
even
him ranked in
remember the other
fantasy?
guys on that
Where do
team.
you have him ranked?
Where do I have Daniel Jones ranked? I mean, I've got
Yeah.
him as my QB 24. So, but this again, like it comes down. I just wrote an article about kind of draft day philosophy and how to attack different pockets of your draft. And he falls into that bucket where it's you're not drafting him to be your QB1, but you draft him and another guy, and maybe you're streaming, maybe he pops up as a weapon. But one of those guys that I'm okay throwing a late round dart at. Maybe he's just like a weekly streaming option, maybe he's nothing at all, but we talk about like that big, vast, expansive area of QB2s this year and why we're willing to wait on quarterbacks. And I think Daniel Jones falls into that discussion with Michael Penix and Bryce Young and Cam Ward as a guy that you can get for free at the end of your draft that could end up being a weekly option.
Yeah, I was gonna label Daniel Jones as my I forgot to draft a quarterback in my
Yeah.
fantasy league. Like
Yeah.
that's where you're at, where you get there and you're like, okay, Sam Darnold, Aaron Rodgers, Daniel Jones, Russell Wilson. Well, let's make something happen. Like I need a player essentially at that point.
The one
All
thing I
right.
will say, real quickly though, is I talked with Greg Branos, Coach Speak Index. He came on my show last week, and we were talking a little bit about this transaction. And he said, he looks at reliability ratings on depth charts and injuries and all these different things. Shane Steichen has one of the lowest reliability ratings on depth chart talk. So he
Sick.
said that even though Daniel Jones was announced not only the week one starter, but they said he's going to be a starter the entire year. Greg said that he would be flabbergasted if Anthony Richardson isn't starting at some point this year.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be flabbergasted too. Like you just let Anthony Richardson, whatever. I'm not going to get into that. Anthony Richardson should have been starting from week one. Jacksonville Jaguars. There's a lot of rumors going on right now. First thing has been that it's going to be a two-man committee between Travis Etienne and Tank Bigsby, with Bayshaw Tootin contributing as like the distant third. But then there have been rumors growing that one of these top running backs on the Jaguars could be a trade candidate. Specifically been hearing it's a little bit more of not hearing like I'm a reporter, but reading on social media that it's Travis Etienne as the guy that's getting put out there. So Dave, is there anything that you have been reading or any kind of reaction you would have to a trade happening here from the Jacksonville Jaguars running back room?
Ah, man, it just sounds like it. Like we've been hoping for this all off season. This is one of those backfields that just terrifies me, to be honest. Like I think Travis Etienne could do better with a change of scenery. I think the same about Brees Hall, but both of these teams just continue to squash the trade rumors anytime it's brought up to the coaching staff. So I've
Just
got these
swap
guys.
them.
Yeah, I've
Just
got
send
all of
Travis
these.
Etienne to the
Seriously,
Jets.
I've got all these guys pretty tight in my rankings. I do have ETN ahead of the bunch just because I think that even if Tootin and Bigsby are heavily involved, I think ETN is the best pass catcher of the bunch. And it's kind of like last year with Rashad White. Even Rashad White got banged up when he came back in. He was still heavily revolved as that receiving back. And I could see ETN maintaining a role like that throughout the season. But this backfield's just so tough to get a read on.
Where could he even go? Like if let's say it's either Travis Etienne or Tank Bigsby, like what team is so strapped for running back right now? Because I can't think of one that's just like, man, you know what we need to do is we need to go and trade for one.
Like I think that I still think Houston. I don't know if you saw there was like another story that came
Yeah,
out today
Houston,
where
you're right.
they asked D'Amico Ryans for an update and he just said no on Joe Mixon. Like we don't know what's going on. This guy might not even have a foot.
I don't
But
think they're gonna trade in division though.
yeah, and that's the thing. And also like I don't know if ETN would be a good fit for that offense. I don't know. ETN has such a peculiar play style that he needs a team that's like willing to kind of build an offensive rushing attack around what he does, which is getting him wide out in zone, using him in the passing
I
game.
mean, that can
He's
work
not
in
a guy that you
Houston.
could just what was that?
That can work in Houston. I just don't
It
think that
could.
that trade is happening.
Yeah, but ETN, he struggles a lot between the tackles. And like, the guys that have found success there over the years are all guys that can just like really bruise between the tackles. And that's not something that ETN can do. So I don't know. Like I thought he would have maybe made sense in San Francisco if they were looking for a little bit of backup behind Christian McCaffrey, but they got that out of the way with Brian Robinson. So I don't know. I mean, we're a week and a half away from kickoff, and there are some backfields that I expected to be shaken up that have not been shaken at all. So we'll see if we get some big trades here over the next week or so.
Yeah, a bunch of these coaches and GMs are just kind of playing chicken at this point.
Right.
All right. Kansas City Chiefs wide receiver Rasheed Rice, quote here, may be facing suspension. I mean, we're kind of sure at this point, but um, Dave, it's just a matter of when. You and I kind of touched on this briefly, but let's say it's a 8 game suspension starting week 5. Is Rasheed Rice like? I don't want to ask if he's draftable, but when would you draft him? How early is he even something you're looking at for your team?
First, I'd recommend looking at your league settings. There are a lot of leagues out there. It's something the commissioner has control over, whether you could put suspended players on your IR or not. I think if you can put a suspended player on your IR, then you can move Rice up a round or two. It's so hard to rank him though, because like, what happens if they just push out this hearing that they have and just decide, hey, we can come to the conclusion we're going to push this out another 6 months. Well, then anybody who drafted Rashi Rice just got like a full season of top 10 potential wide receivers. So like the ceiling case is so high, but this unknown, like I'm hoping that we can get some sort of clarity that maybe they can settle before the season kicks off and we know what to expect. But right now, like you said, an 8 game suspension that kicks in starting in week 5 would keep him out through the fantasy playoffs, through the start of the fantasy playoffs. And that's really tough to stomach, knowing that you're paying up for this guy in round 5 or 6 and you get a month of production and then you've just got to hold him on your bench throughout buys and injuries. So deep benches, IR spots that allow for suspended players, that's where I'm a little bit more prone to take him. But if you're just in a league with like a 5 or 6 person bench, it's really tough to justify drafting Rashi Rice at his cost.
All right, Las Vegas Raiders, the tight end rotation that is scaring everybody. That Brock Bowers is out there, and then it's Michael Mayer, and then it's Michael Mayer again, but then it's Brock Bowers, and then Dave. There's been a lot made of this, but then there's also been the delivery from Chip Kelly, the offensive coordinator over there in Las Vegas, saying is like, we're not really doing the things we're going to do in the regular season here in the preseason. That would be kind of stupid of us. We're giving you guys the most bland, vanilla, boring version of this offense that we can. So it's like, how much do you really read into stuff like this? Because Brock Bowers at one point was a first round pick by a bunch of people, and then he dropped to the second, and then now I'm seeing him drop to the third, which is kind of where I've had him anyways, just because I don't see a big disparity in tight end value there. But it almost seems like everyone else is getting to that point too, but because of this news, not because of tight end positional value.
Yeah, it's really tough to um like recommend drafting Brock Bowers where he's going now. I think that his ADP is starting to fall quite a bit, as we talked about when I was talking about Trey McBride earlier. I've seen him going ahead of Brock Bowers in a lot of drafts now. I've seen Brock Bowers fall into the early third, and I think if you can get him in the early third, that's a great value.
Yeah,
It's probably not going to happen
we did
often.
that. We did that in
Yeah,
the Yahoo draft.
right, and I think that's a totally fine value if he falls there. But we have seen Chip Kelly can be a little bit weird with personnel from time to time. I remember Brent Selleck being a lot more involved during the early Zach Ertz years than I ever would have wanted as well. And I think that Brock Bowers is a better player than Zach Ertz, but Chip Kelly does kind of have some weird tendencies when it comes to personnel usage. So not panicking by any means because I know Brock Bowers is a fantastic player, but also not paying up for him with a second round pick.
All right, next on here, Los Angeles Chargers. There's optimism that Najee Harris could be ready to go by week 1. If he's not ready, Hassan Haskins would come in and be the backup to Amarian Hampton. And Dave, this is where I don't want to see him getting a little worried because I think Amarian Hampton's just still incredibly talented and he'll get plenty of work. But this is something that Greg Roman has always wanted to do, which is feature multiple running backs. And there's not a lot of passing that happens to the running back in a Greg Roman offense. So it's just, is there a potential here that Amarian Hampton is getting capped and Najee Harris is back sooner than we think?
I think so, yeah. And this is something, the Najee Harris, I feel like people just really overreacted to this injury. I got him. We recently did that Football Guy Stafford League draft, and I got him in round 11, which just seems like a huge overcorrection. And I got to shout out Matt Waldman, who comes from a family of eye doctors. I forget exactly if this was like a dad or an uncle or what, but somebody in his family was an ophthalmologist and, made his best attempt at assessing what this injury could potentially been and said that it's a pretty straightforward recovery, that like there can't be any heavy exertion, that he can't take any blows to the head, but that once it's healed, and There's no, fear of blindness or anything like that. And he had said that Najee Harris should be ready as early as week 1 with this incident happening on 4th of July. So I don't know if he's going to be ready week 1. Even if he is ready week 1, I'm sure it's going to take him a few weeks to kind of get calloused up and get ready to play football and get his conditioning underway and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, we've seen that Greg Roman always likes to have these two-headed backfields. Najee Harris is cut from the same cloth as Gus Edwards and other guys who have found success under Greg Roman. So I think Omarion Hampton is a fine player. I'm a little bit below consensus on him, though, with where he's going right now, like the 2-3 turn. It's tough for me to get there. I've got James Cook, Kyron Williams, Alvin Kamara ahead of
It's a
him.
little rich,
Um,
man.
it is, yeah, yeah. And I think like
You
in
have to
keeper
you
leagues
have
and
to
dynasty
hope.
leagues, I see it,
Yeah,
but in redraft, it's a little tough.
that's the thing is like with running back, you have to hope if you're taking him that turn, right, or like looking at second round. I've even seen some people take him on the 1-2 turn, like that's just wild to me. Is you really need Omarion Hampton to pay off as a top 10 or top 8 running back to justify where you're picking him at that point. Because if you're taking him where you would be Josh Jacobs, Jonathan Taylor, Chase Brown, Kyron Williams, he's got to have a I don't want to say perfect season, but a hell of a season to pay off. If he
Right.
hits probably median, that's a I don't want to say a wasted pick, but it's less value than you could have had. It doesn't
I'd
win you
much
your league.
rather pass on Omarion Hampton than get Travion Henderson 2 rounds later, who has just as
Yeah,
much upside, in my opinion.
yeah, 100%. All right, next on here, Los Angeles Rams. Matt Stafford's back at camp. That's just good news. I don't think there's much to put in there. Miami Dolphins running
I just
back
want to say
Ollie.
he is a tough dude. Like I feel like Matthew Stafford has dealt with some sort of injury since like his age 25 season and just keeps playing through it. Shout out Matthew Stafford.
Matthew Stafford has been 36 since he was 21. Like that's just who
Right.
he is. Miami Dolphins running back Ollie Gordon is the running back 2 on the depth chart now. He's been playing great all throughout this offseason, and he's one of these guys that, like, I've had to change the way I'm looking at the prospect because coming out of Oklahoma State, I was saying, man, here's a big guy who made big plays, but he's not that fast and he doesn't really run over people. And now that he's gotten to the NFL, it does seem like he understands his role and he's doing his best to really be the guy that's getting the tough yards. And uh, Dave, if I saw this correctly, it was 22 out of his 26 runs uh, have all been for positive yardage. Like he's not getting negative plays while he's out there on the field. Jalen Wright has been a negative play machine for the Miami Dolphins. Devon Achane still dealing with injury. Jalen Wright still dealing with injury. This was a team that was rumored to have wanted to trade for Brian Robinson back when their depth chart was getting decimated by injuries. But Ollie Gordon has looked really good, and he's one of my favorite late round stashes to get in fantasy drafts.
Yeah, and when we first start doing like the whole rookie scouting thing in January, I'm on record like I don't watch a lot of college football during the regular season, so like I really dive into it during the NFL playoffs. And I remember like everybody was buzzing about Ollie Gordon. And I remember asking Jeff Bell, I'm like, what am I missing with this guy? Like I'm watching his tape from last year, and like he is
He was
not
good
that
2 years
good.
ago.
Yeah, and Jeff was like, "Turn on the 2023 tape," and like immediately, I'm like, "Oh, there it is. This guy's a really good running back." And Jeff kind of tells this story about how he is an Oklahoma kid who went back to Oklahoma State. They had a really good team in 2023, and really the wheels just like fell off the whole team in 2024. And you almost wonder how much of it like he went into preservation mode. Like, okay, like I'm gonna get drafted, no reason to give it my all and blow out my legs in this season. That's kind of a lost year for Oklahoma State. And he did that. And he fell down in the draft a little bit. But like after the 2023 season, people were talking about Ollie Gordon as like the best running back in this class. And then he had a down 2024. But for anybody that like kind of feels the way that I did about Ollie Gordon, like, I'm not really seeing it. Go watch what he did in 2023 because he had himself a really, really good season there. And I see the vision. I mean, it didn't take a lot for me. I was already kind of not feeling great about Jalen Wright, but I've made the switch now. I've got Ollie Gordon about 15 running back spots ahead of Jalen Wright at this point.
There we go. All right, Minnesota Vikings. Aaron Jones and Jordan Mason set to be the 1A, 1B in this offensive system. That doesn't seem to be anything that has changed for this offense. I will say this. I just to kind of bring this back to another team we talked about, Carolina Panthers. If the Vikings go and trade for Adam Thielen, I know that they're eventually going to have Jordan Addison on the field, and they could have Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, T.J. Hawkinson. If Adam Thielen is there, is he a player that you're interested in fantasy drafts?
No, I think like he'd be fine as a third wide receiver and maybe get some early season
Better
bump.
for real
Well,
football than
yeah,
fantasy football.
definitely, yeah, and I think that it's one of those, like, for the first few weeks, it'll be great. I think, like, in best ball leagues, if you're having, like, a wide receiver or rookie wide receiver heavy draft, let's say you drafted Emeka Egbuka and Matthew Golden and, sprinkled in a bunch of rookies, I think Adam Thielen is a great late round target because he could potentially help you out for those first few weeks while Jordan Addison is suspended before kind of falling off the age cliff like we expect. So I think that there, like, is a place for Adam Thielen in some leagues, but I don't expect him to be like a even a top 36 wide receiver over the course of the full season. Um, and then, yeah, when it comes down to Aaron Jones and Jordan Mason, I've got Aaron Jones a bit ahead of Jordan Mason, but I have started to warm up to the Mason talk a little bit. I just want to point out how funny it is that the San Francisco 49ers traded Jordan Mason away so they
Right.
could save money. And then they go out and they trade more draft capital than they received in the Jordan Mason trade to get Brian Robinson so they could pay him more money than Minnesota played Jordan Mason. Like, I don't know. Maybe just holding on to Jordan Mason at the beginning of the season or the beginning of the offseason would have been the smart play here.
Those 49ers are like a toxic ex. Like that's really what they are.
Yeah.
New England Patriots running back Ramondre Stevenson remains the lead back on the depth chart. Dave, your face.
Sure. Sure.
And
Just
I have
like
abs.
it's like Obi Johnson was the lead wide receiver for the Minnesota Vikings in Justin Jefferson's rookie
Yeah.
year, right? Yeah, I'm not buying that.
Yeah.
As
um,
yeah, no.
I think that's all we need to say on that one. New Orleans Saints, Kendre Miller does appear to be locked in as the running back two on this offense. Now, Dave, the big thing for him is going to be is can he stay healthy? And then it's kind of a twofer, right? Like not only does he have to stay healthy, but he's got to be there and ready for when an opportunity does come. I don't know if there's like I don't want to split running back in a bad offense. I would take a running back who has the full-time role as a handcuff in this
Right.
offense, but yeah, there's a few things that kind of have to go right. He's one of those last round draft picks that when you get on that streak of final picks, just throw him in there.
Yeah, and that's it. I mean, this is not going to be a great offense, but I am such a big fan of Kendre Miller's game. Like that,
Oh
watching
yeah,
him, what he
same.
did at TCU, I was just obsessed with him and, big, big, big fan. And he came into the league so young. He just turned 23 years old. Like he is still young than a lot of guys who are drafted this year. Like it is unbelievable. But yeah, he's healthy. And I think that even like the health issues have been overblown a little bit because we got that report last year that Dennis Allen put him on the IR when he was healthy. So even like when you look at all of the time that he's missed to injuries, you wonder how much of that was getting fudged by Dennis Allen a little bit because he just clearly didn't like Kendre Miller. But I heard Kellen Moore saying like he has had a great camp. He's been healthy. He runs hard. He runs aggressively. He hits defenders with a full head of steam, saying all the things that you want to hear and everything that confirms my priors from the player that I saw at TCU. So big, big Kendre Miller fan. And he's one of those guys that has now locked down the RB2 spot and like we were talking earlier with Taj Brooks and some of these other guys that I think should be going a lot earlier, the market just hasn't reacted to Kendre Miller yet. He's not getting drafted as an RB2. He's just not getting drafted flat out at all in a lot of leagues. And I think he makes for one of the best last round targets out there.
New York Giants. Russell Wilson is the starter for now, but Jackson Dart has had a really nice preseason, and they've just how long is Russell Wilson the starter? Like I
Oh,
can't
man.
imagine this being for a long time.
I can't tell you how much time I've spent staring at the Giants' schedule this year, trying to figure out when they're going to potentially make that trade or make that change. And really like there isn't a good time. It's like every single time that they have a soft opponent, it's on the road. And I don't know. I mean, I really think that week 4 sounds a little bit crazy, but I think we might see him in week 4 because first 4 weeks, Commanders, Dallas, and Kansas City, they could start off 0-3 with Russell Wilson. And then week 4 is a home game against the Chargers, which could make for a decent first start for Jackson Dart. I fear if they don't make that switch in week 4, then we're looking at a bunch of road games and we're looking at some really tough home games as well. They've got a week 7 game against the Broncos in Denver. And I think Russell Wilson probably has that one circled. Like he wants to get that revenge game. But if that doesn't go well, I can't imagine that they're going to want to make the switch going up against Philadelphia, San
Yeah,
Francisco,
I actually
Chicago,
think it's
Green
week nine.
Bay.
I think it's
Yeah.
week 9 at home versus San Francisco. Their defense is in flux. It's not as good. You don't want to send Jackson Dart out there to go play against the Philadelphia Eagles. not
Right.
once or twice, right? And like you
I
don't
don't know
want to
if you
go
wanna
on the
and
road to
going up against
Denver.
the 49ers either, that's no tough matchup, and then you always hear, like, after the bye is when they make the switch. I don't know if they wanna go against the Commanders, so, like, it's a tough schedule, so that's what I'm saying. I think week 4 anywhere between, like, week 4 and week 14 wouldn't surprise me.
At some point though, you have to rip off the Band-Aid if you're Brian Daboll. Like
Mhm.
you're going to lose
He's
your
gotta
job,
preserve his
homie.
job, yeah.
Yeah, that's the thing. Is like you have to show that because you can't be like, okay, well, we did it after the bye. Week 15, 16, 17, 18. We got 4 starts from Jackson Dart. He went 2-2. Things might be looking up next year. No, they're gonna be looking up for a different coach, man. Like you're not gonna get that opportunity.
And Dart's already won over the fan base too. Like New York
Yeah.
fans already love Jackson Dart. Like one bad game, like if Russell Wilson doesn't come out looking super crisp in week 1, it's already going to be like put Dart out there. Like we're going to be hearing chants for Dart by the third quarter if Russell Wilson
You know
doesn't look
what?
good in week 1.
I'm gonna say it. I think he's starting by week 4 versus the Los
That's
Angeles Chargers.
and that's it. I truly think the Giants could start off 0-3 and then set Dart up for that home game against the Chargers in week 4. I think
You
that
get
one
a
makes
Chargers
sense.
matchup, a New Orleans Saints matchup, so at
Yep.
least he gets 2 under his belt before
Yep.
playing the Eagles at home Thursday night prime time. Oof.
And if he
Oof.
beats the Eagles, just get him a gold jacket already.
Wheels up, yeah. New York Jets, Aaron Glenn dismissed any trade rumors involving Brees Hall, so at least that's nice. Some clarity, but still committed to a 3-man backfield with Brees Hall, Braylon Allen, Isaiah Davis. Brees Hall, Dave, not someone you're actively targeting in fantasy drafts.
No, I pushed him so far down my rankings.
Where?
RB 22, and I've had him there
Oh,
for a while now. But I mean, he's still getting drafted. I want to say top 15 in ADP. I mean, if you want to
I
look
got
that
an
up
RB
real quickly,
17.
yeah, and it's just that's a pretty big disparity. When you're 4 or 5 spots behind on a player in positional rankings at that point in the draft, it means that you aren't getting him anywhere. Braylon Allen has just had such a strong camp, and we got to remember, like this guy got drafted like 3 months after his 20th birthday, still so young, and now he's coming on much better in year 2. They've just been raving about him, and Aaron Glenn doesn't seem like the type to mince words. Like he seems like a straight shooter, and he has just consistently since the NFL draft said like we have 3 good running backs, and everyone's like okay, like he'll wisen up to it
Ha ha
eventually. Nope,
ha.
we have 3 good running backs, 3 good running. That's all we have heard, and I don't think that's going to change.
Philadelphia Eagles, Dallas Goddard looks sharp. Rumors. Everyone's excited for Dallas Goddard, and like I don't know. Maybe I want to buy in, but I really don't. This is going to sound silly for me to say this as a fantasy football analyst. Like, I don't care enough to buy in. Like, I don't think Dallas Goddard changes things for your fantasy team. I think he gets you borderline tight end 12 numbers. If like that's how the year goes, Dave.
Well, when AJ Brown or Devonta Smith are injured, then Dallas Goddard becomes like a top 5 option.
Sure.
And AJ Brown has missed all of camp. Like he has been dealing with this injury since camp opened. Devonta Smith has been dealing with back injuries as well. So that's why Dallas Goddard is getting so much buzz out of Philadelphia because AJ Brown isn't practicing. Devonta Smith has missed a bunch of practices. So I think this is just like a good reminder. This consistent drumbeat that we're hearing about Dallas Goddard, when he's the third option on a run first team, yeah, you don't want him in your lineup. But if AJ Brown's out, if Devonta Smith is out, he becomes one of the best fantasy options out there.
I just I'm looking at it right now, and I just really, ugh, I don't know, man. Like, I don't have any desire for a tight end. It's tight end 11, 12, 14. Those are the best years in recent memory. Tight end 10 back in 2019. Like it's
Yeah.
just, and I know
But I think it's more
I'm
the
doing box
windows.
score scouting here. Yeah, it's the
Yeah, you
windows,
look at
right? But
like,
like
if you can get 3 weeks where AJ Brown isn't going to play, you can get Dallas Goddard off your waiver wire, plug him in for those 3 weeks,
that's
and
different.
get top 5, top 10 production, which I think, especially for me, somebody who doesn't mind streaming tight ends, Dallas Goddard is definitely a guy that I'll be watching throughout the season.
That's different. You watch him throughout the season, pick him up off the waiver wire. I'm saying like people are drafting him and drafting him as tight end 12, like to be a starter for the fantasy team. That's where I'm out. Pittsburgh Steelers, maybe we're just not paying enough attention, or where everyone's out because I've been hearing the same things in my home leagues. Just like, oh, Aaron Rodgers is the quarterback over there. I don't want any piece of it. But DK Metcalf has just been the guy getting peppered with targets, and it's a lot of the easy targets too. It's just slants and go. And like that is something that if DK Metcalf is getting easy targets and being asked to run after the catch, that does excite me a little bit.
Yeah, and you've got to plant flags in your rankings, and I'm a little bit lower on DK Metcalf than I wish I could be. But again, it's just like I look at the other players in that range. I can't move them ahead of George Pickens or Terry McLaurin or
So
Calvin
you
Ridley
wish you
or
could be
Xavier
lower on
Worthy.
DK.
I
Like
wish I
you
could be
want to
higher.
be.
I
Oh,
want to be
okay.
higher on him, and I just can't. I've got him as my wide receiver 31, but it's just like I look at the names that I have ahead of him, and I just see better projectable volume. And for me, it's just like it's not even so much the Aaron Rodgers personality thing. I think that gets really overblown. I think it's just schematically, we haven't seen guys like this play and perform very well with Aaron Rodgers. Like he likes those guys that can beat press coverage, the guys who he can hit on those timing routes. And that's not DK's game. DK is like an athlete that you get the ball in his hand and you let him create after the catch. And we've never really seen a wide receiver like that really flourish under Aaron Rodgers. And that's my only concern is that like for DK Metcalf to break out this year in a very big way, we'd have to see an archetype that has never really meshed with Aaron Rodgers do it before.
I've got DK Metcalf looking at it right now as my wide receiver 24. I've got him in the same spot as Devontae Smith, Travis Hunter, Ricky Pearsall, Zay Flowers, Calvin Ridley, all in that area.
And the reason you'll hear that I'm low, air quotes right now, low on Terry McLaurin, George Pickens, DK Metcalf, DJ Moore, a lot of the guys that we've talked about, is because I just have kind of flip flopped, like inverted, and I have Travis Hunter, Tedero McMillan, Jamison Williams, Ricky Pearsall. I have Emeka Egbuka. I have all of those guys ahead of the veterans, and where ADP prefers a lot of those veterans, and then they'll take the shots on the rookies and the year two guys. I'm taking those shots on the young guys and kind of fading the veterans in that range.
All right, 5 teams. We'll go quick. San Francisco 49ers trade for and bring in Brian Robinson Jr. I don't think there's any standalone value here, Dave. I think this is strictly you are the handcuff behind Christian McCaffrey. If McCaffrey goes down, I think Brian Robinson is fine. I actually worry that I think people are going to fall into the trap of he's the 49ers running back to like the guy that he can do the same things that McCaffrey or what we've seen other backup running backs do when they get the opportunity. And I actually just think that Brian Robinson's kind of limited as an athlete. Like he may
Yeah.
not even be as good as Jordan Mason was in that role. And I think you're probably, even if with him as the lead running back in San Francisco, you're probably looking at a guy who's like running back 26, 27 on a weekly basis there.
Yeah, and Kyle Shanahan has come out and like said, like put a stamp on it, like this is our RB2. Like,
Yeah,
you know, and
they
I get
traded
it when
for
you
him.
make a trade like that. Yeah, but I still like I look at the wide receiver or I'm sorry, the running backs that have found success under Kyle Shanahan, and they all play with this kind of reckless abandon, like that's why we see these guys getting hurt all the time because like you have to just be like
They're
almost
big play
kamikaze
hunters,
style.
man. They're big play hunters,
Yeah,
and that's just not what Brian Robinson is.
exactly. Yeah. And that's like, I know Isaac Rendo's dealing with an injury right now. And maybe this is me just like holding on to my priors a little bit, but I saw how good Isaac Rendo looked in this system last year. And then I see Brian Robinson, a guy who isn't that athletic and doesn't play with that sort of aggression. And I wonder how he will work out in this offense. I'm okay passing on Brian Robinson in drafts and still taking, deep drafts, of course, 18, 20 plus rounds, but I'll still throw darts at Isaac Arendo because we've seen him have success in this offense. And I don't know if Brian Robinson will.
Still got a candle lit somewhere for Jordan James, who I
Yeah,
really, really like. I can't bring myself to draft him in fantasy. Like the drafts just
right.
aren't deep enough. All right, next up on here, Seattle Seahawks. Ken Walker expected to lead the way. Zach Charbonnet's looked really good. And so I think there were a lot of reports early in camp that this was going to be Ken Walker's just backfield 100%. And then Charbonnet should be just considered the backup. I think we're probably going to see more Charbonnet than we have expected. I just think it's good for both of these guys, man. Like both of them should have good years as long as they're healthy. And I think that's really the takeaway from this.
Yeah, you know me. I'm a big Charbonnet fan. Like I've been saying it since he got drafted that he deserves a bigger role. Maybe we'll see it this year. I'm still drafting Ken Walker where he's going, and I'm still aggressively drafting
Right.
Zach Charbonnet where he's going. I think the ceiling case for both players is just too high to ignore.
Tampa Bay Buccaneers, this is more of just like an update. Chris Godwin's going to be taken off the PUP list to start the season. That's for just, I'll keep elaborating, the physically unable to perform list. So I mean that means he's going to be on the active 53-man roster. that does not yet necessarily mean that he is going to play in games. So we'll keep an eye on that. Jalen McMillan's going to go to IR after sustaining a neck injury. All these things, Dave, even with the news
This
of
might be a
Godwin still.
landing spot for Adam Thielen, to be honest. Like,
Oh,
there's,
come on. No, not
I'm just
another
saying,
slot receiver.
they said Chris Godwin probably isn't going to be back till October. They're saying
Give me
Jalen
Tez
McMillan
Johnson.
probably won't be back until another slot receiver. But yeah, I think Tez
But he was
Johnson is the
good,
guy.
man.
He kind of cracks into that rotation now. But they're saying Jalen McMillan might not be back till after the bye, which is week 9. They're saying Chris Godwin probably won't be back until October, which would be week 5 at the earliest. It sounds like they want to keep him on the roster because they're hoping that he could practice. And if you're on the PUP list or the IR list to start the year, you can't even practice with the team. So they're hoping that they can kind of get him practicing in week 3 or 4 so he can be ready to go in week 5. Chris Godwin still isn't even jogging yet. I'm taking
Yeah.
whatever you say, the over or the under. I don't know how you do it for week 5, but I think we probably don't see Godwin until like closer to week 6 or 7.
Where do you have Emeka Egbuka ranked? Because I think he's the biggest beneficiary of this.
Probably um, higher than
I've
I
got him.
should.
I've got him at wide receiver 37 right now. Like he is right there as a wide receiver 3 for me. I've got him right next to Stephon Diggs, Chris Olave, Roma Dunze, Jerry Jeudy, Matthew Golden.
Well, you're just going to make me sound irresponsible right now, but I've got him
I
at wide
mean,
receiver 25.
I mean, you should feel irresponsible.
Now I've got wide receiver
Yeah.
25. I've got Emeka Egbuka ahead of Devonta Smith, Xavier Worthy, Calvin Ridley,
Oh,
Terry
come on,
McLaurin,
dude.
some big names.
Come on, dude. I can't put him ahead of. I mean, maybe sure, maybe I'm wrong, right? But like, I can't in good conscience put him ahead of a guy like Devonta Smith, who's just been producing year in and year out. Okay, there's that. Tennessee Titans wide receiver Calvin Ridley is resting, and Van Jefferson had himself a breakout game. Dave, I think all this tells you is there's nothing else on this team except for Calvin Ridley and Tony Pollard, and those need to be the guys that you draft from this offense. And if I want someone who's just like really actually exciting, for me it's Calvin Ridley. Like I think he's got the best chance to outperform his ADP right now.
Chigakonkwo. I'm just going to keep shouting
Oh
it from the
yeah, I forgot
rooftops.
about Chicago.
He
I
has
forgot.
been the primary slot receiver on this offense, and there's been a lot of word out of Tennessee that he could end up being number 2 on the team in targets. So yeah, I think like any excitement for Van Jefferson is really just thinly veiled excitement for Chigakonkwo, the guy who like actually should step ahead of all of these wide receiver 2s.
Who? Okay, let's play a game really quick. Chigakonko or Zach Ertz?
Let me pull up my rankings. Zach Ertz.
Chigakonko or Kyle Pitts?
Chig.
Chigakonko or Jonnu Smith?
Jonnu.
Chigakonko or Isaiah Likely?
Chig.
All right.
I got Chig also ahead, the spicy ones. I got Chig ahead of Dalton Kincaid and Kyle Pitts.
Next team on the list here, Washington Commanders. This has been the team that has been making the most news, and I'm sure Jerry Jones is somewhere shaking his fist at the sky that the Commanders keep remaining at the head of the news. But Corey Krosky-Merritt is looking like one of the running backs that would be the favorite for early down work, but also hearing that Chris Rodriguez is going to be getting the short yardage work and that Austin Eckler is going to be getting passing down work. And there's just a lot of excitement over who the running back is here. And before we hop into that, just really quick, Terry McLaurin gets his 3-year contract extension. I've been ranking Terry McLaurin as if he's going to get this extension regardless, Dave. And you and I, like we touched on this earlier, but Terry for me is wide receiver 22 in fantasy. I'm not in love with him, but I'm happy with where he is. I have not found myself drafting much Terry McLaurin at all.
Yeah, and that's why like I am constantly just trying to like tweak with, and that's why I kind of made these switches in my rankings because so often when I'm on the clock and I'm looking at Terry McLaurin, Jameson Williams, Travis Hunter, Tedero McMillan, I end up taking those guys ahead of Terry McLaurin. So I just bumped him down in my rankings a little bit. And it wasn't even the contract extension so much as it was, if you look, Terry McLaurin last year, targets, receptions, yardage was pretty much exactly what he's done throughout his career. He just had an obscene amount of touchdowns last year. And of
Yeah.
course, that's what happens when you're playing with a guy like Jaden Daniels. Rising tide lifts all boats. Like it's a much better offense than he's been in years past. But I feel like drafting him now is you're just expecting him to recreate exactly what he did last year. And now Deebo Samuel's in the picture. I can't get there. But when you talk about the backfield, Corey Krosky-Merritt, it's so dependent on where he goes because there was a point in time right when the Brian Robinson trade rumors started swirling where he was going in round 6, and that is ludicrous. Like I'm not
Yeah.
touching Bill in round 6, But now it seems like it's starting to level out a little bit. And when he falls into round 9, round 10, you're comparing him with a lot of guys that have no projectable volume and are an injury away. Like when it comes to Ja'Cory Krosky Merritt, and I'm looking at him in the same region as a Ray Davis or a Trey Benson, I definitely prefer Ja'Cory Krosky Merritt there. So it all just depends on the price. But I think when he falls into round 9, round 10, I think that's a fair price. What I do like doing, though, is getting Austin Eckler a couple rounds later, a guy who saw 60% of the snaps in the NFC Championship game last year, a guy who was heavily involved as a pass catcher. So I think Ja'Cory Krosky Merritt, Austin Eckler, I think they're both pretty fair values where they're going.
I think something just to take note of is the interview that Dan Quinn did where he was asked about if Chris Rodriguez was going to take the goal line and short yardage work, and then he
Yeah.
kind of said something that was very ambiguous, almost ominous, to where he said, "We don't run a conventional offense." I don't like. I think these are the roles we're giving these players. I don't know that these are going to be the roles that they have. We've seen times in his career where Austin Eckler was the damn goal line back, right? Like
Mhm.
we've seen all kinds of different variations of this team. I think that's probably what's going to be most frustrating for us as fantasy managers, where I think Dan Quinn's just going to lean into you guys don't know who to game plan for in our running back room and lean into that because now they have so many weapons all over the place with Debo, the 3 running backs, Terry McLaurin's re-signed, tight
Not to
end
mention
spot.
Jaden
They've got
Daniels is going to take a huge chunk of that
right,
passing pie for himself or rushing pie.
right.
Sorry.
I would say like I don't know if there's a lot of upside here. If there, who gives you the most upside? Would you say? Do you think it's Bill Ja'Cory Krosky Merritt?
Probably, but also at the same time, like
It feels like
what I could
everyone's getting
see.
high on their own supply right now of
Yeah.
preseason football.
I think the best case scenario, especially like some of the things I've seen in Dynasty are crazy. People trading away like projected late round future firsts, people trading away second round picks for him. Like I think that is just pretty wild to get there. I think the best case scenario for a guy like Corey Krosky Merritt, long term would be like a James Robinson or a Jordan Howard, where like you get a surprising rookie season, you get like an RB2 year 2, and then just kind of fades out of the picture. Like this is a 6 year collegiate athlete who was drafted in round 7, doesn't really have exciting athleticism or anything like that. I understand that like the volume has to go somewhere, and that's why he could have a James Robinson type of rookie season, but just not something that I want to invest in Dynasty whatsoever.
All right, well, there you have it. Dave, we went through all 32 teams, talked about a ton of players here. You and I are going to be back again this week. We've got our football guys, the players that you and I absolutely want to leave our drafts with every single time we are in there. And we've got a bunch of other staples here for you guys. Going to be talking about the best sleepers or breakouts that you need to be picking in your fantasy draft. So make sure you are subscribed to the YouTube channel, to the audio side over on Apple or Spotify. And again, make sure you guys are leaving those reviews on Apple Podcasts. Take that screenshot, send it over to fantasyshow@footballguys.com and enter for a chance to be in the Football Guys Fantasy Show Listener League. As always, I want to thank everybody for watching or listening all the way through. For myself, for Dave, we'll see you next time. Adios.